Welcome to the Copilot Connection. We're here to share with you all the news, insights, and capabilities of the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem across the entire Microsoft stack. This is our regular deeper dive into the more dev side of Copilot and agents. I'm Kevin McDonnell, an MVP for Copilot and Copilot Extensibility, and the UK lead for Copilot and agents at Avanade.
Hi everyone, my name is Garry Trinder. I'm a developer advocate. I'm focused on M365 dev as well as Copilot extensibility as well. So anything to do with developing on Copilot or Work IQ.
Oh, you've got Steve Ballmer in my head. Developer. Which is appropriate because we're going to talk Microsoft Build today.
Yeah, Build.
On that, which was, a couple of weeks? Last week? 2 weeks ago.
So long ago. 2 weeks in AI, right? It's like 6 months.
Yeah. I'm glad nothing else has been announced since then. We've had new models that have then disappeared or anything like that, or brand new products gone generally available. But yeah, we'll cover a little bit about that. So since Build, we've had Cowork go GA, we've had Work IQ go GA, we've had Anthropic's Fable model become available, and then not become available within this. So it's been a nice quiet time as ever. I've probably forgotten half the stuff going on in the news on there. But we're going to focus more on the kind of side of Build from there. And it was interesting. I watched the keynote. I thought it was a fairly long old keynote. Poor
2.5 hours.
Poor children. I was cooking dinner. I was like, no, I'm just going to watch this first. I'll just watch, think it'd be about 40 minutes and then they'd move on to other bits. But it just kept going and going and going. And I quite enjoyed it as well. I have to say, I thought there was some good stuff in there. It was felt a good pace to it as well, which was nice in there. I was a little disappointed. There was no book of news because I always enjoy that being announced and kind of going through there. Instead, they had the Build live blog. I should probably bring that up on screen on there, which I thought was an interesting, different way of doing it. So kind of as things got announced on stage, they then, as it was going through, started kind of announcing things onto the live blog. So, build.microsoft.com. I will hopefully this time remember to put the stuff into the keynote. But then they had the Build live blog, and literally they would update this as it went along. And you not going to give away too much of what we're going to talk about, but you'd see the different items in there got released as it went through on there, which was interesting. Interesting way of giving access to the news.
Yeah, usually I guess we're used to the book of news kind of coming out. But again, slightly different this year. Developer conference, we had the Build CLI as well. So if you were there, you could use the Build CLI and ask questions about, what sessions are on, what's the latest news. So that's open sourced as well. So if you were wanting to get, an agent to pull the news for you whilst you were there, or find out which sessions to go, you could just use that one CLI from the command line. So very developer friendly approach to working things out.
Yeah, for the non-dev side, I think there was also an assistant, so you could. I imagine that was probably pointing at the same data. So, tell me more about Cowork. Probably should have tried this before the show and checked it worked, but it was kind of preaching. It was putting into practice what they were preaching, which was nice. And I kind of felt the whole event was very dev focused. It felt like it was going back to the kind of origins of Build, which is very developer focused. I think they were looking at people you kind of submitted to attend, and they were kind of reviewing your profile file on there. Excellent. Well, that worked well. For those who aren't looking on video, I tried to ask the event assistant, tell me more about Cowork, and it says, I'm sorry, I don't have any information about Cowork from the Microsoft Build event materials. Well, that's an awkward moment on there. So we'll swiftly gloss over that.
It's a good job we're going to talk about it then, Kev.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
The fallback.
But I think why it comes in this, and for those who could see on screen, I found it very interesting with a lot of the news articles that they had kind of GitHub repos for sessions within there. You mentioned there was a lot of labs. There was a lot more labs than they usually have for the big Microsoft events as well. So it was really kind of geared to being hands-on.
Definitely. Labs was one of the biggest things at Build. I know that labs were being run into the evening as well. So that and multiple times. So it was, we've always had the feedback of people have the problem of, I want to go to a session, but I also want to do a lab, and the conflicts. So that was really kind of put into place that we'll have more reruns of the labs, and we'll put them at times when there are no conflicts as well. And it was surprising. We had a lot of people in the labs later on into the evening as well. So it was really, really good to see.
Interesting. I know Chris Lloyd-Jones and Josh McDonnell were there. I want to ask them if the later labs, they had like big things of Monster outside for people to drink to keep them going as well. That would have been perfect. I think a lot of those labs are also, they've been made available. So most of them are on GitHub as well. So you can run through those too. So I'll put a link to that next steps on there as well in the show notes, which was, really, really nice. So I kind of enjoyed watching Build remotely. I'm trying to think, there was something. Oh, yeah. No, we're going to come to that. So I think we'll then jump forward, about a week, I think, to June the 16th, when Copilot Cowork was announced as generally available within there, which is always interesting. I think you and I have both been using Cowork fairly heavily for things. I've had a really good experience with it. It's really useful. It does different things to Copilot, doesn't it? It reacts in a different way.
Yeah. I think its connectivity, its ability to take action is one of those, clear differences in how you use Cowork, and with it being connected to other services in M365 as well, it's a lot easier to kind of have that, I've got things in OneDrive, I want to use things like tasks in Planner, and have all that kind of being pulled into what is it, a task now? It's not a chat. You create tasks in Cowork.
True. Yeah.
And that you can pull context from lots of different areas of M365, which always felt a little bit disconnected, I must admit, in just the standard Copilot. So I think that's been a big difference for me when I've been using it, is that kind of ability to pull in more from M365's ecosystem and the different tools that you might use during the day, to then take action and work.
I was going to say that task name a lot. I think two big things that I found, and I actually hit this today. Task, it can do things more than just kind of bring back information, a lot more than Copilot does. It also does it in the cloud, which I really like. So my problem is I tend to flip between things, and especially when it takes a little bit longer to run, I'll kind of move on. And I tried to get Copilot in PowerPoint to build a presentation, but I must have left it running, forgot, closed my laptop. It probably asked me a question because it was in PowerPoint. History's gone. Whatever it did, I've kind of burnt those tokens unnecessarily. Whereas Cowork will just churn on and do its work in its own time, and I can come back and pick it up at any point. My habits have changed a lot. While I'm brushing my teeth, I will trigger off the thing to check my calendar, to review my inbox, so that when I've dropped the kids at the school, literally, not a euphemism on that one, then I will go back to my desktop and continue that conversation and actually pick up the details from that. And I think that transition between mobile, desktop, letting things run in cloud is a real advantage of Copilot Cowork.
Yeah, definitely. I've been very much using kind of like, VS Code and GitHub Copilot through that, and working like Markdown, but it's all I'm using a cloud model, but everything was kind of local, even though I had things that were in my OneDrive as well. And I think you've probably seen the memes, right, of engineers walking around with their laptops just slightly open because they don't want to shut the lid, because obviously, like the issue that you mentioned, like you shut the lid and everything just stops because everything's local. Whereas with Cowork, you can do that and just set things off and forget about it. And yeah, I think one of those things which I do, I'm using Cowork like daily, is kind of like at the start of my day, I might have a load of things like in a list, I just throw that all at Cowork and go, okay, figure out what I need to do from this. So I'm using like the GTD kind of approach. So I let Cowork kind of do the clarification for me. Like, should I do this next?
For those who don't know, GTD.
Getting things done. Yeah. So identify the task, clarify it, and then, what are you going to do? You're going to take this on? Is this a big project? Is this some reference material? And I let Cowork go through all of that. And what was quite nice is, like, let's say I have a chat in Teams and I create a task in To Do. It has that link to Teams to that chat. Cowork can then do the hop for me. So we can go and get the context of the extra information from that message, not just the text, but like, well, where was the chat and who was in that conversation and what was before and what was after. And it really builds up a real good context that then you can take forward and then go, oh yeah, I remember that. I need to work on, because like, I think we both have, like, our daily work is just you're having things come at you all the time. And you spend so much time just trying to figure out, like, what is that? And should I do that versus everything else? So there's a lot of collecting things. And I think I've been using Cowork for that scenario, and it's been really, really helpful due to its connectivity that you get out of the box, which as a developer, I'm very interested in to know what can Cowork do, what can it access, and like graph and the different systems. So it's been quite good for that.
Let's come back to that in a bit, because I'm going to have the conversation about Scouts with a similar conversation in a sec. I was pausing slightly. I was trying to find, it's a very funny meme that's gone around about, I think it's Apple Open Claw, which is basically a physical claw that holds your laptop open slightly to stop people closing it, which made me laugh, but I can't find the link quickly at the moment. A few things on Cowork. We're going to hit the elephant in the room on licensing in a sec, but we'll pick up the nice things as well. It talks in here about what makes Cowork different. I think some of the new things that have come in with the general availability is that multi-model design within there. So you can now select different models, including OpenAI's ChatGPT. Why is that exciting? Because I'm sure everyone's going, no, I want all the Anthropic models. They're the greatest and the best. Why would anyone want anything else? And for those in the European Union, and for those who don't want their data being processed in the US, that means that you can put it through the ChatGPT model and not have that as well. I think there's some challenges. I'm not seeing that right now. I need to double check I'm saying this correctly, and you can turn it on. You can turn on Cowork even if you've disabled the Anthropic models. I think that is either coming soon or in there now within that. But to me, to be able to use just ChatGPT is a big advantage for those who are kind of being held back from that. So really, really like that. Plus that ability to select other models. I think Mistral's being talked about, certainly coming to the ecosystem as well. To me, this is where the Microsoft route improves. If there is any issues with the model within there, then you can roll it back and just have different options within there. So you have more control. That's not something you can do if you go down the Claude Cowork route or the equivalents on the OpenAI side. So I think that's a big advantage. And also Microsoft said their newest model, which I'm very intrigued by, Cowork One, which will be a secure, fine-tuned model releasing in the coming weeks on there, intended to come at a lower cost on that, which hopefully will go down very well.
Yeah, I think this is, what we're seeing just across the board. We see the same in GitHub Copilot as well, with the changing licensing that we had to be more token-based. And we're going to get onto Cowork's kind of licensing in a minute. But it's kind of that, I think we've been in a situation where we pick a model and we are, this is brilliant, right? And we use it, but we're maybe using that model for tasks that really we can get away with using a different model for doing those things. And I think we're going to be moving into an era now of looking at, being a bit more kind of understanding of what task am I actually asking the agent to do and which is the suitable model. And that can be down to you and your choice. So, maybe choosing between Sonnet or Opus, they're very different, or letting the system decide for you and having auto usage of models. So like model routing, which may then change, based on the individual tasks as you go through a conversation. then it switches models up for whatever you've just asked. So I think this is something that we'll see more of.
Yeah. And well done for not saying the word tokenomics within that discussion as well.
That's for you to say.
Impressive. Yeah. So, for those who haven't heard, yes, Copilot Cowork will have a license model. It says here it requires the Microsoft 365 Copilot user subscription license. I think that's changed actually. So I have seen people say that they can access Cowork now, even if they don't have a Copilot license on there. So maybe it's needed to be enabled in tenant. I was seeing some people today in a chat group, an open one. So I'm hoping I'm not breaching an NDA because, well, if I am, someone else has already. But certainly they were able to access Cowork as an agent even without an M365 Copilot license, because all of the billing is through Copilot credits. So you pay per usage. There isn't anything included. So having an M365 Copilot license does not give you any additional access to Cowork within there. And the way those credits are used is depending on the model, depending on the context, so meaning what you're grounding things on, depending on the tools it's using, and depending on the runtime. So the runtime is a managed cloud orchestration that runs agents and keeps them working across tasks, including long-running work within there. So the combination of those four things is how they work out the number of Copilot credits. Fortunately, exactly how it's worked out seems to be a kind of slightly mystical box in there. So you couldn't say I'm doing this and it will definitely cost me this amount with it, which is probably good because I think there's a lot of different calculations going in that. So to help, they've kind of broken down on this blog post into the types of tasks, with a few sources, light reasoning, one or fewer outputs. They say it's a light task, 100 to 300 credits. Medium, going into more sources, structured reasoning, 2+ outputs, 300 to 700 credits. And then heavy tasks where you're doing a lot of aggregation within you, pulling across a lot of different data sets, context, trying to find something within there, maybe combining all your migration data. I was having this conversation with someone the other day. Can we look at all our content and label it up to see what type of content and how old it is? I was like, yeah, but that's going to cost you because that's going to be more than 700 credits. So all these things grouped together. And Microsoft's given some nice thing. I know the adoption.microsoft.com, I think it's /cowork, on there has some additional context on this, including an estimator. So you can start to look through that to understand what things cost from that. I can give an example. I was pulling together a presentation and I think we calculated that it was pulling from about 2 or 3 sources. It was looking at about $5 to build that up. So it's I'm trying not to say it's a lot of money. It's a not inconsiderate amount of money within there. But now what it means is, similar to what you were talking about, without saying tokenomics, is people need to think about what they're doing and make sure they're getting value. Creating pirate poems using Cowork is a really, really silly idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things which I've kind of been looking at, and I know we'll talk about extensibility later, is the ability to kind of bring that context so that Cowork doesn't have to go and get it live all the time. And maybe that's a case of you have markdown files in OneDrive that you just keep up to date, that just kind of has that kind of fresh view of the things that you're working on, that just gets pulled into Cowork.
Pre-summarizing things.
Kind of, yeah. It's almost like having like a little, like your own little system that's kind of caching data at the same time. Like, hey, this is really good. I don't want to grab this every single time, but just store it somewhere so that I can come back to it at a later date. And I've seen this as a technique used in GitHub Copilot as well in VS Code. Is like you've got some really good bits of information from one chat. It's gone and done some heavy reasoning. It's gone and pulled context in.
Could you think of an
shift
example
that somewhere else?
I don't want you to give me away anything
So,
too detailed.
so
But
one of the things which I'm doing is like, it's pretty generic. We're all working on different projects that I might have like a project's MD file, which is just a simple markdown file that just lists the things that I'm working on and then pointers to different places of like, hey, here's where there's some information, which might be another markdown file. And it might be just like, hey, go and read that because this is something that I've pulled from conversations that I've already had. I don't want to get it, like, I've already got it once. I don't need to get it again because it's a chat. Like, I don't need to get it live again. Just pull that back. And it, like, to your point, it might be a summarization of that information that's pulled back and I store it in somewhere else so that the next time I use it, we don't have to go on live and use tools. We can just go, hey, like there's a file here that we've already got, and I keep that up to date. So that's one way in which you could look at kind of being a bit more efficient.
You could have like where we've done these podcasts. Obviously, we've got the full transcript we put up there, but generally we have a kind of summary. We could generate a summary of the key things we've talked about, and you might keep that summary in a markdown file to kind of, if you wanted to reference where we covered different things, you wouldn't want it going through the whole transcript, which is quite long, a lot of tokens, etc. You've got the summary, and then it might dig into the transcript to particular areas, but you're kind of reducing the amount it has to do on there. That's
yeah,
really clever.
And that kind of design is kind of following the design of like skills that we have today, right?
Yeah.
There's a single file which acts as like a header, which might have some context on it, and then you have other files that are related to that, which then then it's based on the task that you've given the agent. It might go, oh, actually, I need to go get some information, and that top file is just pointing it in the right place. It might not need to go and get it, but it knows where to get it. I think is the key thing, and it can pull it when it needs to. So I think that kind of pattern is something that like I'm looking at the moment, just for more of efficiency. But I think the benefit of that is it's going to be using like less tokens in the long run, because I'm just making sure that, hey, this is really good information. Let's make sure that we keep a record of that. And there's different ways. Like Cowork has memory in it as well, so it can just store those things. Like, hey, this is something that sounds quite important. I'll store that automatically. But I think it's a good thing to just get into a rhythm of just like, hey, that's important. Let's just put that somewhere that we can go back to. So like if I create a new task, I don't have to get the full context again. Like I've stored things that it can just go and look at and get up to speed much faster.
I think the flip side to that is obviously don't put too much in your memory, don't put too much in these files because then they will burn through things even when you're not using them in a lot of cases. So I think it's something we're going to iterate on over time as people using these tools to find the right balance between that.
Definitely, if you store everything in one monolithic document and you pull that every single time, then it's not going to help.
Looking at my OneNote now, thinking, probably shouldn't. And I think then the key to that is understanding that cost. And I think for organizations, I'm going to come back down to the user level in a minute. For organizations, given that this is going to burn through, don't say burn through or get in trouble. Given this is going to use Copilot credits, how many are people using? How can they put some controls? And I was really happy that from that GA, Microsoft has brought this cost management capability within there. Cowork is off by default, so you decide whether you want to turn it on. I know people love it when Microsoft turn things on by default, so this is good to see on there. You can then set spending limits at the tenant level, the group level, so sort of security groups, defined groups within their billing policies, or at the user level. So you've got control about which level you want to do that. Obviously, this needs some planning to put in place to work out how you're going to do that, but you can define those budgets for people to kind of make sure that you are in control of the amount you spend from there, which I'm really happy about. And there's alerts that go out when you get near to those as well. So really, really happy that they've put that control in from GA day one. On that, so I thought that was very good. I I'd forgotten about this. I was going to say one of the things I haven't seen is that user level pricing, and I forgot about this line in the blog post. It does say user level pricing for each task in credits is coming soon after GA so that users can see what each task costs as they run it. I'm hearing a lot of people already have this. If you do /costs within your prompt, then it returns telling you how many credits it's using within there as well. So that's been quite nice on there. But I love this usage reporting. And for those who can see on the camera, who are watching on the video, here is my tenant, and I can see that it's just me in there. I've been using 37 tasks. I'm still in that grace period, so it's not going to cost me any money at the moment. And that's my Cowork view of things. But I can go in and take a look at this cost management that tells me how many of those credits being used. It's broken down by the different agents using it, by the different users, when that credit consumption is going on there. Be interesting though if that breaks down to time of day. That would be kind of intriguing within there. I don't think you can get down to that level. I think it's a per day where the data's stored, but it'd be interesting to know if people are using it more in the morning, lunchtimes, or whether it's consistent through the day on there. But I think certainly for a first view of things, I was really happy to see this. As well. Gary's got nothing to add on that. And we're being very nice and not calling out those who may notice that there are two numbers in there that are slightly different that I would have thought to be the same. So it is telling me I've used 179 up here and 262 down here. So I wouldn't say this is live data. And always consistent. Hopefully this will gradually align a little bit quicker as it goes through. But one thing to keep an eye on. But yeah, I've been playing around. I have all sorts of alerts on this to make sure I don't overspend on it as well.
You're also nice. 2 days behind as well because it stops at the 17th of June.
Because I haven't used it.
Yeah.
I think possibly because I use it on my work tenant, I tend to put more of my stuff there at the moment because that's where a lot of my content is. So this is more for demos and other bits on this. So I'm going to give Microsoft the benefit of the doubt. Stop chuckling. You're allowed to laugh. So, but yeah, really, really interesting to see. I imagine there will be a lot of conversations around the license model and what it means to people, and a lot of conversations around who enables, how do you decide what scenarios, how do you decide which personas get access to it, that will evolve over time, I think is the nice word for it.
Yeah, I think the tip that you gave though about using the cost skill, like just to tell you like, hey, you've used these amounts, like this number of credits for this particular task, is a good way of thinking about it. Like, so you kind of thinking, okay, I've worked this way. Is it more efficient? And you can always work differently, figure out different patterns to be more efficient. So like I said, skills for me is a really good thing for Cowork. It's very easy to create skills. So if you are doing repeatable things in your tasks, just create a skill, keep your skill up to date, and then you can, make sure that you define a good process that you can just repeat rather than, just letting the agent do whatever it likes for that particular instance.
Which you can repeat across Cowork using Copilot Studio, GitHub Copilot, and now Microsoft. Oh, that was such a good link for a second. And use across Microsoft Scout as well, which I think is the next thing that's kind of came up as the big thing at the build. I would say it was kind of interesting because it didn't get introduced straight away as Microsoft Scout. I think it was Satcher who introduced it, who talked about autopilot. So whereas we had Copilot, there's always been that conversation about being there supporting you on the side. Autopilots are about going out and doing things without you on there, taking action on your behalf on there, and actually on you or your organizations. I'd say from there, I think Scout is on your behalf. That's your assistant on there that will run things even when you're not there. There is this view that people can build their own autopilots, that there will be other things coming. I think we'll come on to some of the OpenClaw and window things a bit later, but it's that kind of view of creating something that will run, process stuff all the time from that as well. And I really like that. I know we've heard a little bit about this. This has come from the, what do they call it? Clawpilot, which was kind of the Windows, the Microsoft build out of a lot of the OpenClaw style capabilities. So Omar Shaheen, I know, moved over to there. I think on the show we've talked a little bit about this, but this is the kind of big reveal of things really from this. And again, I've said this time and time on podcasts, my favorite thing at Build and Ignite is when they release something that you can download and start playing with straight away. And that was the case with Scout. So it is currently a download, so it runs locally. I think I know they've talked a lot about autopilot. I'm making sure I don't say anything that I'm wrong about, but I'm pretty sure they said there was the intention for this also to have some element of cloud connection as well. But right now it runs locally. So to what you were saying earlier, Gary, I need to leave my laptop slightly open for this to continue running overnight. Otherwise, it goes to sleep and doesn't do anything. So this will run on your laptop within there. This is much like OpenClaw, but designed to work within an enterprise. So it's designed to connect your enterprise systems. It's designed to have those controls that enterprises are happy with as well. And I love this statement here that it is powered by the OpenClaw open source technology, but they are supplying and building back. So what they're creating is also getting put back into the open source world as well. Which I really like to hear as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to compare Cowork versus Scout at the moment, I would classify them as Cowork being remote. It's running in M365. It's not on your machine. The models, they're all hosted, and all the connectivity is done for you. Whereas Scout, it's running from your machine. It's using GitHub Copilot CLI in the background to then get access to those models as well. So again,
those models
local.
Currently are all hosted, so you can't
They are
on local. Whether that changes, I don't know.
Yeah. GitHub Copilot CLI is the mechanism to access the hosted models of which Scout will use. So again, like with Cowork, you can select different models, although the selection is limited because that's based on what the platform provides. With
limited,
Scout,
but including Gemini, which intrigues me.
But if you've got GitHub Copilot CLI, then you've got more of a choice of the different models that you can use because it's coming from through GitHub Copilot. But yeah, like with Cowork, it's got access to your company data through Work IQ. There are some differences, though, in what services Scout can access and Cowork can access as well. But I think one of the things that you've mentioned already, Kev, Scout's heartbeat kind of functionality. So you can just have something that is just constantly checking. And this was one of the big things about OpenClaw or Clawpilot when it first kind of came about, was that we have this idea of the heartbeat that is constantly checking things like, hey, as new messages come in, let's process those. So you would kind of connect it to all these different data sources, and it would be constantly polling them, getting new context, and then deciding, okay, what do we do with this new context now? And it's more autonomous in that sense, that you can just leave it be and kind of handle things. Obviously, how it handles it is down to the workflows, the skills that you create,
what you've given it permission to do as well.
Exactly, as well. Yeah. And I think this is where it's kind of like at the moment, I'd be definitely saying, compare the two. I'm certainly doing that with Scout and with Cowork. There are benefits. There's pros and cons to either approach, right? With Scout, what's really good is if you have something on your machine like a CLI and you're authenticated, you could get Scout to use that CLI to then go and access another system on your behalf, which is good because it's on your machine, right? Whereas with Cowork, you're kind of limited
Sorry,
to do it.
Gary.
Sorry,
You said there that's good. So I can run Scout on my machine and connect to any API.
potentially, yes.
So that is something for admins to consider with that. I would add there. So I think it's good.
This is correct. Yeah.
I've found it very powerful. It is a risk. Now, obviously, if you've got GitHub Copilot, you know a bit of coding, you can go and do that anyway on there. But it is something that organizations will need to make sure they are considering with that as well.
Yeah, so I guess I see it as a kind of a way to connect to information that I might need in my day-to-day role. So let's say I need to access GitHub. Really simple thing, right? I use GitHub every single day. I want to bring that as part of my kind of workflow in Cowork or in Scout. With Scout, I could just use the GitHub CLI. I can authenticate with my GitHub account, and I can get Scout to use that CLI to access that data. It's still running as me. It's all protected. That's all good. With Cowork, I don't get that kind of level. I've got to kind of go a different way, which may be down the plugin route, which is then maybe a different approach. How do I store my credentials? Because it's in a cloud service is going to run that on my behalf, not something that's running on my machine. So there's different things.
It's also about you as an individual versus you as an organization. So, you talked about connecting up to GitHub. I sincerely hope that Microsoft allows some connection to GitHub with Cowork. They will manage that plugin from a central administration. But if you wanted to find out what time should I leave based on my calendar that I've got, what time should I leave to get a bus? I want to connect up to the UK bus timetables. There's an API there. I can imagine Microsoft not being quite so keen to put a plug-in for that. Or one of the ones I built with Scout was a connection to Online Scout Manager, because I like a good pun on there. So I run a Cub pack. Within that, there's a fantastic system called Online Scout Manager where we manage everything within there. So I now have Scout talking to that. It has an API to retrieve information. You can't update anything with it, but I've now set a nudge to myself with Scout. Every Monday, have I put the program together? Have I sent the email? If not, can you, based on the note I've got, pull some activities, recommend some activities, build out that for me so I can easily copy and paste it, build an email to parents for that, for anything I haven't done yet on there. There is not a chance in hell that I will be able to put that on the Avanade system, but I can run it on Scout on there. So again, pros and cons to that. The ability to connect to things, the ability to put to items like that is suddenly a lot more open and needs thinking about with it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to when you're looking at the two different kind of approaches as well, is just kind of like, there are gaps on either side. Those gaps will get filled. Like, they definitely will. Priorities dictate other things are being worked on, but those gaps will be filled, no doubt. But I think the good thing at this point is knowing how you can extend both of these approaches and understanding where there's the benefits of using one system because it is local and the benefits of using another system which is remote, and also the cons as well because of those two approaches. And that kind of comes down to what you as an individual need, because I see these very much at the moment as like they're personal assistants to me. They're not org-wide things. They're not department. We might see that in the future, but I think very much at the moment it's about you and the way that you work, and then using AI agents to kind of adapt how you work and maybe help you be more productive, more efficient through using these tools.
It's funny. I hadn't thought about it. We saw Copilot originate as that personal Copilot, and we started to see things like having agents in Planner, agents in Teams that start to become collaborative agents that work together with groups. And I think I think you're absolutely right. We'll see that with Cowork. We'll see that with autopilots, probably more than Scout. That we'll start to see ones come along and help, departments, organizations, teams, different layers within that to do more. And maybe You got my brain go. Maybe that's the opportunity because Microsoft has said here is a model for building autopilots. They will build some, but they're opening it up to others. So maybe this is the opportunity for developers to start to put these autopilots in place within there as well. I just want to come back to something you were very nicely talking about comparing the kind of features and what to use when a little bit. I think the other thing that plays into that is licensing and cost from
Mhm.
there. I think, now we know that Cowork has that license. It's a usage license. It's the same with Scout. As you say, it uses GitHub, so it's burnt. Stop saying burning through. It
Using.
is using those tokens from the GitHub CLI, so you will use your models within there as well. So one of the challenges I've seen with that so far is that if you have a GitHub, well, a first one, the challenges of getting Scout up and running that many have faced is you can just download it, but you need a GitHub Business or GitHub Enterprise Copilot account to set up from there. And I think it's fair to say that's kind of been locked down. So new ones are not coming through from that at the moment. I think the demand probably went through the roof straight away with people going, quick, I need this. So
Mhm.
there is a little bit of, I imagine it's a capacity issue within that. So I hope it will be a short-term piece on there because there was certainly a lot of interest. So people are moving ahead with that, but I know a lot of MVPs have been chatting. It's funny, you put a post up and suddenly it was like, how do you do that? How do you manage that? So there were a lot of discussion points around how to get access to the right GitHub Enterprise from there. And then looking at the cost of that, Heartbeat's fantastic. I love something running all that time. But of course, that uses tokens every time, so there's a cost associated with that. And where I talked about loving and that slash cost with Cowork, with Scout, it does show you actually the number of tokens it's using as you're building ones, but it doesn't show you how many you've used over time as a user. And you can't. I know if you're using GitHub Enterprise, that's also the case on the GitHub side. It's kind of hard to see how many tokens and set that control that you have with Cowork on there as well. So something to be very aware of if you're opening this up to people. I'm sure those who've been using OpenClaw have seen the same thing. But the cost of running that is something to keep a close eye on too.
Yep. Yep.
But I was going to say, I've you mentioned the Heartbeat. I now have the Heartbeat hooked up, hooked up to my Work IQ. My head did go earlier because we're going to talk about Work IQ in a sec. Does that mean I'm going to get charged for tokens and for Work IQ soon? Ooh, this could be interesting. But for the time being, I'm going to ignore that. But I've set my own priorities. So what is a priority for me? I know whether it's specific clients, work I'm doing within the organization. And I've got my Scout looking at my incoming mails, my team's messages, and it's kind of refocusing me. I got it to build a dashboard, which is continuously updating on how much time and effort I'm spending on different things, looking at whether I'm baselining that correctly, highlighting priorities and things that I need to get done, but not just this sounds like a priority because someone's shouting. Does it align to my own priorities? And, if I'm spending too much time in a project, it will automatically say, this is kind of a priority, but this one's more important because it aligns with things and you're down on that as well. So I can still make a choice. It's not forcing me to do things, but it's allowing that. Did have the shower thought today of where I've got some of these lower priorities. I asked Scout to actually go and try and action some of those things as well, which is some of the things I'm going to try and get today. So those people who are waiting on stuff from me, you might get Scout talking back to you, which will be intriguing as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation. I think it's the thing I've loved of watching OpenClaw and what people are doing with that. Omar Shaheen's blog talks about a lot of things he did of kind of ordering cinema tickets and getting it to do things like that. We will see that in the enterprise, and I think there'll be some really interesting bits. I think there will be some things that spend too much money and aren't worthwhile at the same time, but I think this experimentation will be worth it. And it's about doing that value assessment of each of those.
Yeah, I think we'll see obviously more people talking about it now because it's gone GA. Previously, it was Frontier program. Obviously, you didn't have as
That's
the
Cowork
usage
you're
limits.
talking about there.
Cowork, yeah. The usage limits. Obviously, now that's there, people will find different ways, and different ways in which they're using it as well. So I think it's part of the, have a look at what other people are doing, see how they're approaching things, and then work from there. And like what I'm doing is sometimes you just have to go in and try it as well, and work things up. So I know you were doing a lot of kind of like, hey, the heartbeats there, I've not got that. I'm still kind of doing a bit of manual, kind of like, hey, I'll check things, but then I'll put it into my system to then let Cowork process. And it's like, everyone's working at different kind of levels, that, I would say keep you in the loop as much as you can to then refine things. And then once you've done that, then you can kind of start stepping away using more of the automation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I touched on something there as well, though. I mentioned Work IQ. I think Work IQ's been around for quite a while. Yes, I am chunkily going, yeah, it's been called the graph before. But I think there is more to Work IQ than that. Yes, it's surfacing the information from the graph, but now we have these Work IQ APIs that were announced on there. And they've got that intelligence because of that semantic index and the work that's been done with the personal memory. I think the kind of foundational data that's there, the information, how it gets to you and where you ask a question of this, how it's brought back is where the real improvements on there. This isn't just search within the graph. It kind of brings in your skills, the structured schema as it sits within there. It's looking at business specific knowledge tuning to really bring back the most relevant content from there. It's one of these things that's going to be really hard to quantify. And I don't envy Microsoft for trying to get that across. I think in many heads, people think, well, it's just search. Why is this different? But I think we are seeing this improve from there. So there is a lot included with this. It's faster, especially where agents are putting these things up, putting load on there. This will reduce that latency. It will improve how you're getting to your data because it's not having to do a lot of the inference and orchestration within there. It's more efficient in terms of the number of coding. So if you were just talking to the graph, the number of tokens that you end up spending becomes higher versus using the Work IQ APIs. It's designed to scale within there. Those who can't see on the screen, there's a lovely chart of the growth in requests to M365 driven by agents. And there's a huge spike in that. I think a lot of these systems of record like SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce are seeing similar things and having interesting conversations around what they do with that as well. And it still has all your security pulled together from that as well. So this is allowing access, whether it's MCP, A2A, etc., to all your content from there. But I think the interesting thing that really came out was, again, there is now Work IQ API pricing. So if you're using that API pricing, then it will cost. And for those who are, I think it came under the graph, didn't it? Originally, that there was the Copilot APIs, and I think these are kind of rebranded and added more from that. Now there is price for that, and my initial reaction was, yeah, fair enough. If I'm building some code that needs to talk to Work IQ, or I'm running my GitHub Copilot that I want to use Work IQ, it makes sense that there's some cost in there. The difference I feel now is even if you have an M365 Copilot license, it will still cost to use these APIs on there. If you access things through Copilot, it won't cost. Otherwise, it will cost from there. So what does that mean? Because those looking on the screen will notice that it includes Copilot Studio. I'm still trying to get my head around this, and I think I've just had a little kind of moment or there which has de-panicked me slightly. Because when I was thinking about this yesterday, it suddenly hit me that all those Copilot Studio agents that are talking to your SharePoint data, pulling information from Teams, etc., using those MCP tools, are they going to suddenly start charging? But based on the comment that as long as it's through the Copilot UI, then no. So as long as your agents go through the Copilot front end, then I don't think there's a cost. And Gary's gone very quiet, which means he's not too sure on this either. On that,
It would be a question to ask of the product groups, definitely, to get some kind of clarity on the pricing going forwards. But yeah, like, I mean, the first line is saying it's consumption based pricing, but if you're using tools, then it's fixed. But for chat, it's kind of variable. So I think there's some homework to do on this at the moment, definitely, to see where things actually land in terms of the pricing. But yeah, it'd be interesting because like, this is API based as well. You got MCP is covered by tools, but what about A2A as well? Is that included in the same? I think, yeah, there's a few questions to be answered on that one.
Yeah, so I can see for those looking on the screen, by the way, there's a typo there. They're blog posts. But you got two types of query. One is static, and that's the tool API. So if you're returning from one of those MCP tools, it's 0.1 Copilot credits per API call. And then there's a variable rate for when it's chat API or work IQ context, the kind of search style semantic index. And then it depends on whether it's light, medium, or heavy as to how much is included on there. And it's got the scenarios.
Yeah, so looking at that, I mean, using tools to access data like from your agents is one way, but then the chat API is literally like using the orchestrator, like sending your prompt across, getting a response from that. It's like the conversation style in Work IQ, right? Whereas context API is then more of the kind of semantic search, which, yeah, those are your variabilities. So
yeah, I'm mixed opinion. I think I need to find out more before I get a full opinion of this. To me, I think if you're not using it in Copilot Studio, I kind of get that. So if I've built a web agent that's talking to my work IQ, I can get the costs on that. I think if you're using it through Copilot Studio, certainly if it's through Copilot, I'm hoping there's no additional cost. I think that would be a really big mistake. I'm hoping also if you're using it in Teams, so a Copilot Studio 1 published to Teams, I would hope there's no cost with that as well. I think that would be a mistake. I think if you're publishing to web and elsewhere, I can see that could be, but I don't know. We'll try and find out for the next show and dig into this a bit more, but certainly something to read and keep an eye on. And again, that will feed into that same cost management dashboard as well, which I like. So you can set your budgets, you can set all the things we talked about with Cowork. You'll be able to do with these Work IQ APIs as well. So if someone's trying to build an agent that kind of trawls through all their content, you know, what you were talking about, Gary, there, of kind of summarizing that, another good reason you do it once, and then keep your summaries and not continuously do that unless you really have to. So something to keep an eye. So there was some other stuff mentioned at Build. I'm sure people are shouting at the screen, go, what about this? What about that? We're kind of focusing on Copilot Cowork Scout, Work IQ as the kind of Copilot aligned work. The one I found very interesting that I kind of think fits with some things we were talking around Scout was the Microsoft execution containers. So basically that ability to connect and run things on local machines, a bit like OpenClaw would, but in almost like a sandbox where you can define what things can access. So I could run OpenClaw on my Windows machine, but only give it access to, say, certain drive. You can build your policies to say what it can do. So you've got a lot more control within there. You can make sure it doesn't delete all your system files, that it doesn't delete everything from your OneDrive locally, which then gets cascaded up. So you can start to build up what it has access to and what it does and who approves that on there, not just from an individual user perspective, but from an organizational side, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's It's interesting because we talked about Cowork, which is remote and it's in the cloud, but then we got to Scout, which is then running locally, and then we're kind of back to local again, right? And it's all about this: how do
It's
we
that ever
contain?
cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. How do we contain things that we're running locally as well? Because we have the advantages of running things locally as well. You can get the benefits out of that. Local models are they will get better as well. They'll be able to handle more of the tasks that we would have previously only been able to use cloud hosted models with, right? As hardware improves. So I think it's a good step that we're starting to isolate agents, put them in these containerized environments that are more read only to avoid them from from a security point of view, right? That we're constraining the environment in which the agent can work in. That could be, again, back to the network level as well, and really going, okay, we're only going to let you access these particular domains as well, which is another thing, which is something that I think is going to be quite important going forwards, because as we see, it's so easy for agents to just make HTTP call somewhere, right? It's easy to do that. So it's just a kill command, right? So it's like having that isolation, I think, is definitely good as we start to see
per
more
agent
local agents
as well. So you can define different
Yeah.
things for different agents within there, which I really like.
Yeah, and we've had things as well, like the one thing we didn't mention in Scout, actually, the browser automation part of Scout. Like,
Yes,
maybe you want that in your container as well, RPA, all that kind of stuff.
which you can do in Cowork as well. That was the other announcement we forgot.
There we go. We missed that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're moving outside of the chat box now, right? And
Yeah.
not just APIs. In the the agents can control browsers, they can control applications as well, potentially. It's like, these are the surfaces that could potentially be used, therefore thinking about what an agent should be able to use and what it shouldn't be able to use, and be able to block those is, I think, very important forwards.
And there's a lot in this blog post that we'll put in the show notes. He's talking about sort of micro VMs, so having mini VMs running from this, Linux containers. The one I'm hearing a lot of people start to talk more about is this Windows 365 for agents. So you can spin up your machine in the cloud with kind of limited capabilities and run your agents against that. So you're kind of de-risking all the kind of things you've got on your local device you don't want to run to execute. I don't want it to connect to Online Scout Manager for certain things and suddenly go and do a load of stuff there. But I can run a kind of spin up a Windows box there, run it temporarily, only have certain things on there, and then spin it down again within that. I find that really interesting to come through from there as well. So I feel this is very early days for some of this. There's a lot coming from this. I saw some of this talked about at the MVP Summit this year, and really caught my eye. And I almost forgot the thing that I love as well, as it kind of fits with a lot of things I'm talking about, that Agent 365 will be able to manage the agents within this as well. So it kind of gives you that central visibility of what agents are doing in the cloud-based agents, but also those local agents too, which I think's really nice. That double combo between them is really worthwhile and worth looking at. So I thought that was a nice... It's sometimes at Build and Ignite, that's kind of a small announcement that kind of triggers off a whole load of thoughts and makes you think where things are going. This was one of those for me as well. There were a whole load of Foundry updates that we're not going to touch on. I'll try and find some links and put them in the show notes, sort of low-level ones, but a lot of good stuff happening with Foundry. Also something called Rayfin, which is kind of running apps based on your data with Fabric, kind of dynamically building those up, which are, I've heard some really good things from the MVPs who've been trying that out on there as well. So maybe we'll come back to those in a future show and dig into them a bit, but really interested to see where that goes. One that really caught my eye was, and I've lost the link to it now, was, Solara. So we've kind of talked a lot about agents. I think you and I very much sit in that knowledge worker category. But what happens when you've got more frontline workers or you've got more moving around? And Project Solaris started to looking at that, but could you have a device? So, for example, like I won't say the word, but the Amazon device that if I say it will probably trigger off a whole lot of things. What if you had a device like that in the office that could go and trigger off things? Or even a device that sets around your nature of that here. I can't see it. They would instead become a small phone style device, but actually had cameras looking around, reviewing. Did you see much of that, Gary?
I didn't. I'm struggling to hear you a little bit. You played the video, and it went a little bit weird. But no, I didn't see much of this. Only just kind of afterwards. Is the I think it's back to again like running things locally. Like I really see that having that ability to have AI models running on devices in a secure way, doing those kind of like low level kind of tasks is I think something that we're going to see more of. So I think, we're all using phones, we're all using different devices. So it's kind of, it feels natural that we're kind of heading in that direction as well. Less things going to the cloud as well. Keeping all things on device offline is I mean, we've worked in consultancy with lots of different organizations. The word offline always comes up, right? So being able to go that way is much better. And like I say, running things locally, like sensitive documents, you don't want to go anywhere else. You've just got it on your machine. A local LLM is perfect to do some kind of processing on that, so that
I think they were moving to the cloud, weren't they? So it was kind of a trigger to almost like Cowork run things in the cloud from there as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, having your different options, start local, move up, for what you're doing. But back to the very conversation that we had at the beginning, right, about model selection, using things that are relevant to what you're what you're trying to do. And that's not always the bigger model that can do absolutely everything, because whilst it can do everything, maybe you're paying for a lot of that you're not using. So yeah,
Very, very true. Am I coming through a little better now?
perfect.
Excellent. Good. Well, as good as I can be, but maybe not perfect. We'll go with that. So I'm just going to wrap up the last couple of bits. Very interesting that hardware for Solara is not something Microsoft building. They're building the framework for these things to run and then working with hardware vendors to create them. What they are building is this beautiful device, Surface Laptop Ultra. Everyone kind of goes, is Microsoft's going to carry on having hardware? Yep. They've brought a brand new Surface device using, the RTX Spark, I think. I might have got the wrong thing, but the latest NVIDIA engines on that. This is the top of the range laptop from there. As well. Will I be getting one? No, there is not a chance of me getting sign off from procurement, otherwise known as my wife, for one of these. But they do look very nice from there as well, and I'm sure there would be some people getting hold of these to get that NVIDIA silicon from there as well. I know Scott Hanselman was showing that on stage, and that was his new day-to-day device. So interested to see how that goes. What would be interesting is one of these dev boxes. So these are designed for kind of almost building your models for those, who are touching there on having local models, having that really high end stuff. Was it talking like 1 million something or others? Trying to think. Yeah, a petaflop for your desktop. So 128 gig of unified memory. Having 16 on mine and trying to run Teams at the moment is hard enough. But that's another conversation. You're not getting one of these? It doesn't have enough Apple logos on there, does it?
I just had my refresh. Yeah, my M4 Max will just have to do for now.
Probably works on there. So
yeah.
We'll put some show notes of all those things. I think especially the build next steps for those who want to get hands-on and more on the dev side on that as well. But I thought it was pretty good build overall.
Yeah, I think it's interesting back in San Francisco as well. back in, its AI hub. Lots of
Yeah, I
obviously
hadn't thought
AI
like that.
announcements. Obviously having the kind of the relationship with OpenClaw, kind of founder as well, bringing that to scale.
Yes,
Like,
because he was on stage, wasn't he, on the keynote? And I've suddenly forgotten his name
exactly.
now.
Yeah,
Stefan something, isn't it?
Peter Steinberger.
Peter Steinberg. Thank you.
There you go. So yeah, so having that there, I think it was good. I think, from what I've heard, I didn't go, but I know that we've listened to a lot of feedback from previous builds. Since we were coming back from pandemic, we've really kind of made sure that like the labs were there available to everyone. It's a lot more accessible with the news and the tooling that we've done. It's a bit more dev focused as well. Like, hey, we've built a CLI that you can use. And I forgot to say, actually, there's a skill that you could use with that and add that into your agent as well. And I think what's really good is, like, looking back, I think it's just that kind of progression that we've seen of how development is changing, how AI has changed it as well, where so it's kind of looking at where we've come from. Now that, hey, we've got these things, we just know that people are already using agents to where we want to go in the future. So I think, AI development is kind of here. Yes, there is the pricing and everything like that, but I think we've kind of seen there is value and people are using it. I think now we're in the era of how do we get the best out of these tools? Because we need to be more
For
conscious
spending.
about
Yeah.
how to use them and where we should be using them as well. So I think, yeah, that for me, I think it's going to be probably the next 6 months. We're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more of evaluations, efficiency, looking at token cost, and looking at maybe different approaches to
I
how we
think
work.
the one thing I'd ask people to do is everyone keeps talking about tokenomics and token cost. What I want people to do is look at the value that those tokens are bringing, that it's not just about cutting the cost, it's about balancing what you're getting from it to the cost that you're taking from there. Because otherwise we're just going to say, everyone, no, we can't do this. The same token, that's the wrong word to use. Same, don't just use the latest model. Don't use the biggest one. I think we'll see people doing less and less. And you talked about this a bit of people selecting that model. If you're not sure, use the auto ones on there. Don't just whack it to Opus 4.8, or if you're lucky enough to still have Fable, to whack and use that just for the sake of it. Because I think that's what's churning through a lot of things as well. So making sure people use the right model for what they're trying to achieve. And I think we'll see the Microsoft and the kind of tools using Microsoft getting much, much better at recommending the right thing as well. So yeah, really, really good to see. Great builds, great developer focus. My one request to Microsoft, if you're going to get people in the crowd whooping, do it from the very beginning so it doesn't sound dead. Realize someone panics after about 10 minutes because no one's making any noise, and then have the same group of people whooping the same volume. Dot them around, have different people doing it at different times, then it sounds natural. Or get AI to add it on afterwards. That's fine. I can live with that. But it did feel a little bit unnatural. I also think maybe they need a better warm-up act, because people did seem a bit like they hadn't had enough coffee, because I actually thought the announcements were very good and there was kind of silence at the beginning, which was a shame. So yeah, get the warm act on, get Scott Hanselman to go and do a little bit of a comedy routine at the beginning, and then Satcher can come on. So I'm going to get in trouble now. No disrespect to Donna Sarker and the What's It Cup that happened beforehand. She's a fantastic warm act as well.
The Imagine Cup.
Oh, Donna's going to kill me now. I think on that note, we should probably wrap up before I get in trouble.
I think so. So it's a good idea.
Thank you very much for joining me again, Gary. And we will see everyone again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.